With these videos I feel like I have so much information to share that I get a bit overwhelmed. I also feel like I'm wearing my Explorer shirt today. Hi guys and welcome to today's video. If you saw my last video you may have seen that I mentioned that I want my content this year to be slightly different. I'm not sure what I mean by slightly different, but basically I'm going to film whatever I feel like filming, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it and hopefully you guys will find it useful. Some of it might be a bit random and this is probably one of those random videos, but the reason I am filming this video is because I'm looking to book somewhere like a little bit exotic and I don't really know how to go about it. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but when it comes to booking European city breaks I think I'm a bit of a pro because I have booked quite a few. There might be people in an opposite situation to me where they're not too sure how to book and plan a city break, so I thought I'd film this video for anyone that needs a little bit of help. But also there may just be a few things in this video that you haven't thought of, a few little tips and tricks, and if you have any tips or tricks then please do leave them down below as well. Also I have my laptop just here and I'm gonna need it because I've written notes because I don't want to miss anything out, and I find these sort of videos really hard to film and it's what I want to do more of this year, but I don't have anything to hold. I think that's quite tricky, but let's see how it goes and hopefully it's helpful. So first thing I want to mention is that I don't particularly go for a super luxurious city break. I don't have a lot of money to spend when I go away. I like to do it on a budget. If you're looking for tips on how to do like super luxurious city breaks, this video isn't that. When I do go away I like to explore the city. I don't just like to stay in my hotel room. I like to explore the city. I like to eat lots of food. I don't really go out clubbing or anything like that whilst I'm away, so there's no tips on how to go clubbing. My Berlin vlog is one of my most watched, I think it's my #1 most watched video on my YouTube channel, and everyone says how boring I am. I'm sorry, I'm okay with that though. So obviously the first part of booking a city holiday is deciding where to go. In terms of European cities, my top one is Lisbon, then Berlin, then Paris. Those are my top 3. And of course London if you're not from London, but I'm going to Barcelona next month and that's kind of what I'm going to plan with you, and I'm so excited. I think Barcelona may slip into my top 3. If you're unsure of where to go or if you haven't gone on a lot of city breaks, my kind of one tip is to not be picky. What I quite like to do, and especially at the beginning, I kind of listed out any time I had off. For me I like to travel with my boyfriend, he's a teacher, so it depends when he's on half term. Wrote down all those dates and I wrote down a list of cities that I wouldn't mind going to. And then the website I personally like to use to book my flights is Skyscanner. I used to use eBookers and sometimes I check both, but I prefer Skyscanner at the moment. By the way, none of this is sponsored. The amazing thing about Skyscanner is they have the option to type in everywhere as your destination, and then it will list all the countries cheapest first. The only kind of thing to note is that sometimes you'll click on that country because one of their cities is cheap and then the second one will be quite expensive. So what I recommend doing is looking for the top few if you're looking for something really inexpensive. But if you have a destination in mind, which nowadays I do typically have a destination in mind. For example, at the moment my destination is Barcelona, so I'm just typing in Barcelona and hitting search. Also, if you're quite flexible with dates, you have the option to type in whole month. That's a good way to do it as well, if you're just looking for cheap dates and don't have a specific day you want to go on. Also worth noting, Europe is far cheaper to travel around in January and February, but be mindful that it's gonna be cold. Last year we went to Budapest in February. I went with some of my friends, actually maybe in January, and I kind of regret going in January because it was just so cold that I feel like it kind of ruined it a little bit. At one point it was like -12 degrees. So if you do want to travel in January and February, and like I said it is cheaper, think of going to more southern countries. So again, Lisbon, Barcelona, Madrid, probably even like Rome would be a little bit warmer than going to any Scandinavian countries or anywhere in Northern Europe. One thing to kind of consider, but it's not always an option, is to travel by train. Often travelling by train is cheaper and it's my preferred way of travelling. From London you can travel to Paris and I guess like Scotland by train. Sometimes it's slightly more expensive to travel by train, but how I like to think about it is you make up that money by not having to travel to the airport, and I find that travelling to airports is usually far more expensive than travelling to the station. For example, for me it'd be far more expensive to travel to any of the airports than it would be to get on the tube to King's Cross, which is where the train leaves to go to Paris. Also, the time you have to be at the train station is far shorter than the time you have to be at the airport. Around the other side, it's far easier to get to central Paris from Gare du Nord, which is where the train comes into. It's basically central Paris anyway, than it is to do so from one of the airports. And I had one more point, your luggage isn't as restricted as it is on an airplane. You don't have to pay for the luggage either. I much prefer travelling on a train if I have the option, and if you're in Europe, I think it's quite easy to travel Europe by train, but I've never done it. So my personal opinion is that 2 or 3 nights, which is 3 or 4 days, in a city is usually more than enough. So I typically don't go for like a whole week. I think most cities can be done okay in 2 days, but I think that's quite a full-on, not very chilled trip. But my thoughts with that is that you get a taste for the city and you can come back at a later date. 3 days I think is probably the perfect amount, and 4 is if you kind of want to relax. I only really do 4 if I think the city's quite inexpensive. So let's go back to ebookers. One other thing that I really like to do is when I select my city, which for now I'm using Barcelona. In London I'm happy to fly from any airport but Southend. I'm not sure when Southend became London, but apparently Southend is a London airport. So I type in London as a whole, and I think it's quite good to kind of search options. Be quite open with the airports you're willing to fly out of, especially if there isn't too much difference. But do bear in mind how you're going to get to the airport. For example, I really hate Luton, and I think unless you live quite near Luton, it's a bit of an annoying airport to get to. I know nobody really likes Luton, but I do fly out of Luton occasionally, but I know that I have to park there because there is literally no other way of me getting to Luton. Gatwick is great, I just get the train from King's Cross. So basically just be quite open with your searches if you can, but take into account the cost of getting to and from the airport as well, and sometimes it's worth spending an extra £20 on your flight, but it being like £40 cheaper to get to the actual airport. The other thing that I look for when I book my flights is that I really like to fly out in the morning and fly back at night, just because it means I get to make the most out of those days. When we went to Rome, it was one of the first city breaks I'd really booked, and we flew back from Rome at midday, which meant we had to be at the airport at 10 AM, and that meant that we had to pay for a whole extra night at the hotel when we didn't really use it. So I think it's usually worth paying a little bit more for your flight in the evening, but you save loads of money on that hotel. So yeah, that's pretty much how I book it. I then obviously just choose the cheapest flight, and bear in mind baggage allowance, double check that for sure. No one wants to have to pay baggage once they get there, and then I just go ahead and book. Trying to think if I've missed anything out. No, I think that's it. But before you go, it is worth just having a rough look at hotels, just so you know what the price is. For example, when we went to Copenhagen, my flights were incredibly cheap, but hotels were incredibly expensive. So it's just worth looking into that before, so you're not surprised. For Barcelona, I went to Twitter, I typed in Barcelona, and then I went to people who you follow. I follow a lot of bloggers, so I went through and read lots of people's guides and clicked on their video links. I saw that Anna from the Anna Edit had stayed at this hotel, so I booked to stay there. Otherwise, I used Trivago to book hotels. I really have a good look on TripAdvisor. I personally would rather pay slightly more and stay in the centre, because usually you make the money back by not having to pay that much for transport. I usually walk everywhere once I'm in the centre of the city. Also, I feel like you get to make the most out of the city. That's just what I like to do. I really like to stay quite central. So, but yeah, just definitely look at pictures as well. I'm quite picky with the decor. Being a blogger, I like pictures in the hotel room, so I'm quite picky with that. Booking.com is quite good for photos. Also, if there's anything that's particularly important to you, have a look on TripAdvisor. You can type in keywords and you'll read people's reviews. So for example, if you want to be near a gym, go on TripAdvisor, type in the word gym, and you can see if anyone has spoken about a nearby gym, or if the hotel has a gym, that sort of stuff. Decide on whether you want breakfast included or not. If you're in a particularly expensive city, sometimes it's worth having breakfast included with your hotel stay, but in Barcelona we don't have breakfast included, and I'm just going to use it as a good excuse to explore a few more restaurants. Then it's kind of on to planning the actual holiday. You've got somewhere to stay and you've booked your flight. I like to plan how I'm going to get from the airport to my hotel before I get there, just because it's so much easier. We have never rented a car during a city break. I just think it's pointless because parking is just too expensive usually within a city. You can usually walk everywhere, and then that's an extra expense to rent a car. So going back to Twitter, I go and I read everyone I follow's guides or watch their vlogs to the city I'm going to. So I like to plan where I could eat and what I would like to see, just because I feel like it makes me more productive whilst I'm there. And this might be a bit much, but I like to pin everything to a map. Google has something called My Maps. I can actually show you on my phone. I pin it all on my computer. I don't know if you can pin it on your phone. I just much prefer working off my computer. I pin different layers onto the boards. I have a hotel layer just because I like to keep that always active. A restaurant layer. At the moment on my Barcelona one I have a dessert layer, and then I also have like a sights layer. Or like attractions layer. So it means that whilst I'm there, if we want dinner, I can just select the restaurant layer and I can see what we're near from people's recommendations. Also you can write notes, so sometimes in some of these I just wrote good for Instagram. Anyway, so for my Barcelona one, click on Barcelona and it all comes up on my phone, and then you can literally just click it and you can click directions to that place from where you are. So it's great because it's automatically on your phone if you're logged into your maps on your phone. The other little thing I like to do is I like to search for the hotel I'm staying at and also just places to go on the places tab on Instagram. So for example, Barcelona, and then I go to places, type in Barcelona, Spain, and then I like to kind of, from the top post, I like to see like what pretty places basically that I might want to visit. I quite like watching people's stories, and the other thing, this might be a bit weird, the other thing I like to do is see what people are wearing so I can see roughly how cold it's going to be, because sometimes it'll be like 10 degrees but it might not feel like 10 degrees, but just be a little bit careful because there is currently a topless man, but he's used hashtag throw it back Thursday, so that's probably not recent, and then there's a man in a full parka, so it's probably cold in Barcelona. And I like to do the same with my hotel. That's my hotel, that's what it looks like, just because I kind of like to know what to expect. I think it'd be quite useful for me to do a bit of a travel guide to London, because actually other people think London is expensive. There's a lot of free attractions, which I found isn't the case in Barcelona. It seems that everything I want to see is 20 euros to get in each. It makes it quite expensive. If we wanted to see everything, I think we'd be spending like 140 euros each just on attractions. So I'm definitely going to go through and pick what I actually want to see. I've pinned everything to my map, and I'll probably go outside everything, but I probably won't go inside everything, especially if we're going in peak season, which in Europe is typically kind of like June to September. I would highly recommend booking tickets beforehand. It isn't something I've really done very much in the past, but for Barcelona I'm going to, and it is usually something that is worth doing. We have been on holiday and not been able to see stuff because we haven't pre-booked, so it's kind of just worth going on TripAdvisor, seeing if they recommend pre-booking. And again, I do read reviews off TripAdvisor for everything I like to see. I have a little issue with TripAdvisor because TripAdvisor, you can't filter it by like your sort of people, so they may have different expectations. So especially with hotels, I like them to look very Instagram-y. Obviously TripAdvisor doesn't take that into consideration, so just bear that in mind. But like for example, in London, the British Museum is a super popular attraction. I'm sure it would be quite high on TripAdvisor. I think it might be. I personally don't like it, so just bear that in mind. Like, consider, is it for you? Like, don't just go because everyone else thinks it's good. Like I mentioned, look into restaurants, just because, especially if you're going to somewhere very touristy. When we went to Rome, the food was generally a bit crap everywhere, and I think that's my mistake for not looking into better restaurants. So I would highly recommend you research what restaurants you want to go to, so that you don't go to crap, very expensive touristy places, which can happen, especially if you're all in the centre of town. I try to kind of find chains that are worth going to for lunch, but I find that that's a very London thing. In London, I feel like somewhere like Pret or Itsu are great for lunch, but I don't find that other European countries have them as much as we do. They have like the usual McDonald's and Burger King, but I typically want something slightly healthier than that, but it's not that common in the rest of Europe, I find. My biggest mistake on one of our first, maybe our first 2 trips, was I over-planned. And although I really think you should plan, I really think you shouldn't over-plan. It became stressful. I insisted we get out of bed very early. We had to go to this and that. I literally had like a route plan, and it was just too much. It wasn't fun. So unless you're going just for like a day or 2, I would recommend you plan, but don't over plan, and allow for time to relax. So I think for Barcelona, I have pinned everything on my map. I don't do it by section, so I think one day we'll go to one section of my map, then the other section, and then kind of split it into 4 sections and do those. I'm going to allow for time to just relax and enjoy the actual city rather than just rushing and not having a nice time. And then my final tip is to have a good time. Enjoy the city. Bear in mind that if it's raining, it's probably gonna be a little bit grayer and not as fun. Not necessarily not as fun, but not as picturesque. But just make the most of it. have a fun time and eat all the food. That is my favourite thing to do when I'm abroad. But I really hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you'd like to see like a packing video or something like that. My only issue is that it is February, so I'm going to pack like wintry stuffs, and I think it depends so much on the season and where you're going and stuff like that. But I could do a packing video, so let me know if you would like to see that. Let me know what cities I should visit in Europe, but really I need to book a big holiday outside of Europe because that's something I've never really done. I'm thinking either Bali or Mexico. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like to see more stuff like this. Like this video if you did enjoy it, because I am a little bit unsure if this is the sort of stuff that you guys want to see, but I think so. I hope so. See you all soon. Bye.